How do you define Web3?
So I think about Web3 as everything that's happening outside of the Bitcoin ecosystem, right? So, yeah, so like I think the Ethereum ecosystem spawned a wave of innovation because of smart contracts. Now, some of that is, very similar to the use cases that were built on Bitcoin. So DeFi, borrowing, lending, and staking behavior for security. Now that stuff, that's foundational, I think, to Web3 in within the Ethereum ecosystem. But everything else that those smart contracts are being used for, and we saw the NFT boom, right? Like, and it was about collectibles, but that was really just capturing the imagination of developers and what they could do with those smart contracts and provenance. I think the use case building, the utility building around those assets and those smart contracts, I think it's all Web3, right? It's about building utility into these blockchain assets. Entertainment is a part of it, but I don't consider it to be just about entertainment. And I don't consider it to be just about getting people onboarded into these 3D immersive worlds or the metaverse, even though I think that is a likely use case for the ecosystem and the technology.
So you kind of view it as a part, but also defined by the practical use cases, right? While those may have been foundational, it's more than that, right? Which is good. It's actually when you said other than Bitcoin, the only thing I worried about was the Bitcoin maxis coming after us.
Oh yeah,
Have you ever
and I
seen
mean,
that crowd?
the ones talking about Taproot and Lightning Network. I
the
mean, that
ones
stuff is.
the ones that think Ethereum is fake still.
I've got
I
some
love you,
names
Bitcoin
in
maxis.
mind.
Please don't come to my
Yeah,
house.
exactly. I've got some names in mind, but I dare not say them
Yeah,
out loud.
right, right.
So yeah, I think payment, right, is also, it's applicable to the Web3 world. It's an application that I think is viable in the Bitcoin world also.
Mhm.
I think with this term, right, which isn't my favorite way to describe this innovation wave that we're going into.
It's
I
just the
think it
most popular meme,
exactly, exactly. Shout out to Chris Dixon for that one
right?
also, right? Like he's a genius and he deserves some of
Hey,
the
listen,
accolades he's getting.
and I think we talked about this earlier in the episode. If not, we talked about it offline. But it it is such a high technical barrier to participate and understand this space, and I'll call it this space intentionally, that Web3 just happens to be a framing that the general audience can understand, right? When I'm teaching at corporates or I'm first explaining to my mom or her friends, I'm explaining, you remember back in like the AOL days when all you could do is read stuff on the internet? And then you remember like in 2004, 2005, all of a sudden Facebook starts to pop up. YouTube's a thing. You're starting to conduct commerce, like that's Web 2. And then wait, now you can start to own all that content and data. It's just it's a helpful framing, but it does not encompass those things unless we do it. So what I do actually, and you'll see after the episode, is I actually take everybody's answer to this question and put it in a single playlist.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so you can
That's
just go
awesome.
through because everybody thinks about it a little bit differently. It's not about having a universal answer. It's about how everybody else interprets it and how they explain it. So maybe I'll start re-asking the question as like, how do you explain Web3 as opposed to how do you define Web3, right? We
Yeah,
don't
and
want to
I
be in the
think
confines of a definition.
yeah, and I think when we're not trying to define it and when we don't have to explain technically why it's different than Web 2
Mhm.
is when we've reached the next phase of the evolution, of this area of technology, right? I te-
When it's just web, I've actually heard when it just
right?
becomes web, that's when Web3 has actually made it.
Right? Like, yeah, it's interesting, right? A lot of inventors out there trying to redefine the space, and I think that there's still room to invent, what the
Absolutely.
broader,
non-early adopters will call it, and how they'll use it, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's my early definition. It's everything that's not Bitcoin.